Please turn to Genesis chapter 46 this evening and 7. So Matt finished with Joseph for the most part last week. One of the key verses of chapter 45 was, "And God sent me before you to preserve a prosperity for you in the earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance." And so that's what we're going to see tonight, part of that promise being fulfilled. We saw Joseph as a type of Christ. In this verse, we can see God will send him to save and deliver his father, brothers, and all their relatives. He'll be used. So here in chapter 47, when we get to 47, we're going to see them become a great nation. So Father, we lift up this study. We pray for your truth into our hearts, the nuggets of all you have for us, Lord, as we read these two chapters and you bless us with them, that we might see things you want us to know, things we might need to maybe repent of or hold on to. And so we just pray for your blessing, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen. So starting in verse 1, so Israel took his journey with all his land. So remember, Pharaoh sends the carts and everything over to pick up Joseph's dad and family, and he says here, he went on a journey with all that he had, and that's his children, his grandchildren, and his great-grandchildren. Genesis 45:20 told us, "Also do not be concerned about your goods, for the best of all the land is in Egypt is yours." I like that. Come on down and don't worry about bringing anything with you. It's all going to be paid for. How many of you want a vacation fully paid for? Just, yeah, right? It's like, yeah, I'll take care of everything. I like that when he told them that. And it says, "And so he came to Beersheba and offered sacrifice to the God of his father Isaac." I didn't put up a map of Beersheba, but if you know Israel's sort of a diamond shape. And then you have Egypt, and Beersheba's like right in the middle of that diamond. And it's the furthest south you can get before you enter Egypt. So Beersheba was a place that was well known to everyone. It was a special place for Jacob because we also know that he stopped and talked and worshiped God in Beersheba. Abraham and Isaac both lived in Beersheba for a while. In fact, Isaac left from Beersheba when he took off from there out. And so Beersheba was well known to them, and it was the place where God met Hagar, if you remember, when she fled. That was towards Beersheba, as when Isaac met God there. Then God spoke to Israel in the vision, so we turned more to Israel than Jacob. So the name Israel, remember, it was after wrestling. He changed his name, and God spoke to him by a vision of the night and said, "Jacob, Jacob." And he said, "Here I am." So he said, "I am God, the God of your father. Do not fear to go down to Egypt." So it seems like he might have had some fear. And moving can be stressful. And moving can be fearful, especially if you leave one country to go to another, or like in our case here, one state to go to another can be scary. You leave your job, you leave everything you have, all your security, you leave your family, you leave everyone to go somewhere different. And then when God calls you to go, then you need to go. And God here tells him, Israel or Jacob, "I am the God of your father, and do not fear to go to Egypt." He's telling him, don't worry about it. You need to go there, for I will make you a great nation there. So he tells them what he's going to do when he's down there. I'm going to make you a great nation. This is the promise to Abraham of making him a great nation. As many as the stars of heaven, he would have descendants. So God confirms to Jacob the same promise that he made to Abraham, that he would become a great nation. And this was to give Jacob comfort in order to go to Egypt. And you need that when you need to go somewhere. Often we need God's comfort and assurance that this is what he wants us to do. Unfortunately, I have met too many people that go without seeking God. Christian people. They just go without seeking God. I don't know how people do that. I could never go anywhere without seeking God to make sure this is what he wants. And once I know, then I'm good to go. But it's just interesting that there are people that don't. So it's always good to know that God's with you wherever you go. And he says in verse 4, I will go down with you to Egypt. So there you got it. I'm going to be with you. When you go, I'm going to go with you. And I will also surely bring you back again. Now that's an interesting promise. I want you to go there, and when you get there, I'm going to bring you back. Well, of course, we already know it's going to be 400 years later, and he's going to bring back his body. But the promise is still fulfilled. God said, I'm not going to leave you there. I'm going to bring you back, and Joseph will put his hands on your eyes. Remember the brothers, when they went in 45, they're telling him Joseph is alive, and to his father's amazement. And so God is assuring him that he's going to touch him. Then Jacob arose from Beersheba, and the sons of Israel carried their father Jacob, their little ones, and their wives in the cart which Pharaoh had sent to carry them. So they took their livestock and their goods which they had acquired in the land of Canaan, and went to Egypt, Jacob and all his descendants with them, his sons, his sons' sons, his daughters, most likely speaking of daughter-in-laws, and his sons' daughters, and all his descendants he brought with him to Egypt. So the whole family is going to go. It's not just him, like he did like Abraham when he left Ur of Chaldea, and it was Abraham, Sarai, and then Lot and his dad. They're the ones that took off. And here with Jacob, it's the whole family, it's the whole tribe. Everybody's moving together to a different location. Now, these were the names of the children of Israel, Jacob and his sons who went to Egypt. Reuben was his firstborn. And the sons of Reuben, I'm going to blotch a lot of these. I'm going to cut them up, but enjoy the ride. And the sons of Reuben were Hanok, Pula, Hezron, and Carmi. The sons of Simeon were Jemuel, Jamin, Ohad, Jashan, Zohar, and Shul. And the son of a Canaanite woman. The sons of Levi were Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. And the sons of Judah were Onan, Shelah, Perez, Zerah, but and Onan died in the land of Canaan. The sons of Perez were Hezron and Hamuel. The sons of Issachar were Tola, Puvah, Job. And this Job, some believe it's actually Job from the book of Job. Not sure, could be. Shimron. And the sons of Zebulun were Sered, Elon, and Jeiel. The sons of Leah. These were the sons of Leah who were born to Jacob in Paddan Aram with his daughter Dinah. All the persons and sons of his daughter were 33. And the sons of Gad were Zipion, Haggai, Shunai, Isban, Eri, Eridai, and Erilai. And the sons of Ashner were Jimnah, Ishua, Isai, Beriah, and Sarah, their sister. And the sons of Beriah were Heber and Melchai. These were the sons of Zilpah, whom Laban gave to Leah, his daughter, and these she bore to Jacob 16 sons. The sons of Rachel, Jacob's wife, were Joseph and Benjamin. The sons of Joseph in the land of Egypt were born Manasseh and Ephraim, who Asamath, the daughter of priest of On, bore to him. The sons of Benjamin were Bela, Bishur, Ashbel, Gerah, Naaman, Ehi, Rosh, Muffin, and Huffin, or Puffin, Huffin and Puffin, and blow your house down. and Ard. So Benjamin had 10 sons. He had a big family compared to the rest of them. Last born, most kids. These were the sons of Bilhah, whom Laban gave to Rachel, his daughter, and she bore these to Jacob, 7 persons in all. All the persons who went with Jacob to Egypt, who came from his body, besides Jacob's sons' wives, were 66 persons in all. And the sons of Joseph, who were born to him in Egypt, were 2 persons. All the persons of the house of Jacob who went to Egypt were 70. Now, 66 and 70, you balance it out by Joseph, his wife, and 2 kids, makes 70. So you add the 66 to the 4, and that's how you come up with the 70. So the start of the promise of the stars of heaven, I believe, start right here. This family's going down, and then it's going to explode over the years as they keep having more and more children. And so the promise of Genesis 15 given to Abraham will start to take place as the sand of the seas as they start here. So a lot of kids, a lot of grandkids, and a few great-grandkids. Someone said 4 great-grandkids were a part of the people that traveled down to Egypt and to this new land, and all new for them. It's kind of interesting when you go to somewhere new. I'm pretty sure almost everybody here has lived somewhere else at one time, started over somewhere else. It's like when I talk to people in this church, they lived in, California or Florida or Texas or Wyoming or whatever for 5, 6, 7 years, and then they came back. But it seemed like most of us here had traveled somewhere for a while and started over. And you know what it's like to go somewhere different, especially if you go alone or with just your wife and you don't know anybody. You have to start everything over. As Christians, I think we're blessed because when we go somewhere, we go to a church and we make friends right away. We don't have to wait just for our job. If we get a job to do this or that and make a friend here, make a friend there, you get yourself plugged into a church and all of a sudden you got a whole bunch of friends right away. It takes time to build this relationship, but it's just so much easier when you go somewhere. That's how you meet people when you get involved. That's how I met John. John at a pastor's conference with Wayne, that's how I met John. And in fact, I sent him a picture the other day when he was about that high. I think he was 12, but he was older. But yeah, I'll show you the picture if you want to see it. At a conference, I go, man, look at John, man. It's funny. So you meet people, and that's how you get to get together with other people. So it's going to start here. Verse 28 says, then he sent Judah before him to Joseph to point out before him the way to Goshen. Now, I did pull up a map of Goshen, and they came to the land of Goshen or Goshen. So this map, did we get that map? So this one doesn't have a lot of detail, but if you connect the 2 lines up there, the sea and this here, right in the middle there somewhere is Bathsheba. And Goshen is that northern part right above the Sinai, all the way to the water. That's Goshen. That's the area. Fertile. It's really, that picture should be green because there was a lot of grass to eat for cattle and sheep and stuff. And so all that, the Egypt's on this side, you get the land of Goshen. Now other people have it down here, over here. Most maps have it on top in the delta area. So that's sort of where Goshen is, somewhere in that area. And that's where we're going to be reading about here. And so they point out to him the way to Goshen, and they came to the land of Goshen in the northeast there. So Joseph made ready his chariot and went up to Goshen to meet his father Israel. And he presented himself to him and fell on his neck and wept on him a good while. In other words, how many of you have ever been hugged by Jenny? They hug like Jenny hugs. Jenny don't like to let go. She just wants to hold on. That's what Joseph and his dad did. They were just holding on to each other. And they wept and they were crying as they met each other for the first time. And many believe 22 years Joseph had been gone. Remember, he was 17 when his father gave him the robe of many colors, and the brothers wanted to kill him, and on and on and on. But he was gone 22 years. His dad thought he was dead for 22 years. So for 22 years, they didn't see each other. The father thought he was dead. The son knew he wasn't, of course, but he never got to leave because he was taken as a slave to Egypt, and then all the stuff that happened there. And so 22 years later, they're going to cry. They're going to weep. They're going to hug. They're going to hold on to each other because it's the first time they got to see each other after all those years. And Israel said to Joseph, "Now let me die, since I have seen your face, because you are still alive." He was happy. I'm okay to die now. Kind of remind me of Simeon in Luke 2:29. "Lord, now you are letting your servant depart in peace according to your word, for my eyes have seen your salvation." And it was like Jacob was like saying, you know what, I'm good. I've seen my son, he's alive, and this is a good time for me to leave. And he thought he was going to die, or maybe he wanted to die. I don't know. But we know he's going to live another 17 years. And so he's happy, he's excited, and he's ready to go if that's the case. Then Joseph said to his brothers and to his father's household, "I will go up and tell Pharaoh and say to him, my brothers and those of my father's house who were in the land of Canaan have come to me." So I'm going to go tell Pharaoh what's going on, and I'm going to ask him, tell him some stuff, because I know Pharaoh. And notice what he says to them. "And the men are shepherds, for their occupations have been to feed livestock, and they have brought their flocks and their herds and all that they have. So it shall be when Pharaoh calls on you," this is what I want you to say. He's going to ask you, what is your occupation? "And you shall say, your servant's occupation has been with livestock," cattle. Cattle. You got to remember this. Joseph's telling him, listen, I know Pharaoh. I know what he's going to do. I know what he's going to ask. I've been with him a long time. And he's going to ask you, what is your occupation? And I want you to say, your occupation is with livestock, meaning cattle. "From your youth even to now, both we and also our fathers, that you may dwell in the land of Goshen, for every shepherd is an abomination to the Egyptians." In other words, the Egyptian people didn't like shepherds. They didn't like sheep. We don't know why. Some have theories about it, but what we do know, according to this verse, is shepherds weren't really welcome. So Joseph says, tell them you raise cattle. They probably had some cattle, but he's telling them, just say you raise cattle and we'll worry about the sheep later. And so he's telling them what to say, because he knew that the Egyptians did not like sheep. And so God would use this time to keep them in Goshen, because remember, Goshen's up top. Egypt is up top, but it's down. But the top is away. It's far away from civilization. It's far away from the main group of people. And I believe God put them in an area where he could protect them to keep them away from everyone else. Because in Canaan, if you remember, Esau and many others were marrying Canaanite women or Ishmael cousins and stuff, and intermarrying. And so here they're going to Goshen, into Egypt, and they're going up north where they would be preserved. Genesis 45:7-8 tells us, "And God sent me before you to preserve a prosperity for you in the earth, and to save your lives with a great deliverance. So now it was not you who sent me here, but God. And he has made me a father to Pharaoh and a lord of all his house and a ruler throughout the land of Egypt. In other words, Joseph says, God sent me here to protect this family. God sent me here ahead of time because he had a plan already. I mean, I said a couple of weeks ago, or maybe it was Sunday, that God knows ahead of time what's going to happen. He's got things already laid out. And here he allowed Joseph to be taken to Egypt because he had a plan for them to go to Egypt, and that's where they would cohabit with each other and grow into a nation of Jews without the influence of the Canaanite and all the stuff that was happening down there. So Joseph was sent ahead of time in order to protect them. In chapter 47, we read, Then Joseph went and told Pharaoh and said, My father and my brothers, their flocks and their herds, and all that they possess have come from the land of Canaan, and indeed they are in the land of Goshen. And he took 5 men among his brothers and presented them to Pharaoh. Now, we don't know which 5. We don't know why just 5. But he brought 5 of his brothers to meet with Pharaoh. Then Pharaoh said to his brother, What is your occupation? Joseph said, that's what he's going to ask you. And they said to him, Your servants are shepherds. They're not going to mess around. They're just going to come right out and say, Your servants are shepherds, both we and also our father. I think Pharaoh might have been shocked. And Joseph's trying to make it an easy route, but these guys are like, no, we're not going to say we're just cattle people. Our main function is shepherd. And we don't hear more about that, which is kind of interesting because Joseph makes it seem like this is going to be trouble. But when you get here, that's all we hear. Your servants are shepherd, both we and our fathers. And they said to Pharaoh, We have come to dwell in the land because your servants have no pasture for their flock. And because for the famine is severe in the land of Canaan. Now therefore, please let your servants dwell in the land of Goshen. Then Pharaoh spoke to Joseph, saying, Your father and your brothers have come to you. The land of Egypt is before you. Have your father and your brothers dwell in the best of the land, and let them dwell in the land of Goshen. And if you know any competent men among them, in other words, if there's any more like you, then make them chief herdmen over my livestock. And, I've always felt that is a compliment to a believer when your workplace says, Are there any more like you? It shows that you are a God-fearing Christian and you do your job as unto the Lord with fear and trembling, and you're honoring God and you're representing God, that even the employer wants to know, is there anyone else like you? You ever had that boss tell you that? You have others like you that do that? I have. I know other people that have too, because their work ethics are godly work ethics, honesty, integrity. They're on time. They're people that the employer says, man, this is somebody I can trust. And when they know somebody, and Pharaoh knew Joseph, of all the people that he had, Joseph he knew he could trust without a doubt. And he says, man, if you know any more, give them a job in my livestock. Let them care for my livestock as well, because he knew Joseph was a man of integrity. And I always think that's a great witness of the Lord in your life when your employer asks you if there's any more like you. Then Joseph brought to his father Jacob and set him before Pharaoh, and Jacob blessed Pharaoh. Now who's Pharaoh? He's the king. He's the president. He's the prime minister, whatever title. He's the man on top. But what do we read here? Jacob came and bowed before the king. No, Joseph did not bow. Or Jacob. Israel did not bow. What Israel does is he blessed Pharaoh. Why is that important? Because it shows that Jacob or Israel knew he had authority. And he blessed Pharaoh for all Pharaoh did. Later in Hebrews chapter 7, verse 7, it says, now beyond all contradiction, the lesser is blessed by the better. Jacob blessed Pharaoh, Pharaoh being the lesser, Jacob being the better. So Jacob knew who he was as a man of God, but he also was not going to bow, but he did bless Pharaoh and probably praying a blessing over him and thanking God for all that he did and for his son. And Pharaoh said to Jacob, how old are you? Now, why would he ask that?
All the knowledge he knew.
Jacob was 130 years old. Now, you guys seen the movies. And Jacob got the big, kind of looks like Matt there. Jacob got a beard, he got his staff, and he's walking into Pharaoh, you know, old man kind of bent over. You've seen that, right? You've seen the movie. And here comes Jacob, and then he blesses him, and Pharaoh's first thing is, how old are you? Because he sees this guy. And Jacob says to Pharaoh, the days of the years of my pilgrimage, interesting word, pilgrimage, my travels and things, are 130 years. And then he says, few and evil have been the days of the years of my life. They seem like nothing. And there's been some hard times in my life. Evil here means lots of hurt, lots of pain, lots of grief, displeasure, misery, and you put it all together, what he's saying, I've had a difficult life. He had his sons, full Shechem and his tribe, killed all the males that when they were circumcised. His daughters raped by Shechem. He's gone through all kinds of troubles, and he tells them, you know, my 130 years are few, and there's been some evil days in my life. I've had a hard life. And they have not obtained to the days of the years of life of my fathers in the days of their pilgrimage. In other words, Abraham died at 175 years. Isaac died at 180 years. He said, I haven't lived as long as them guys. I've only been here 130, and they've been some pretty hard days. But it seems small in comparison to how long they have lived. And you got to think of that. And here he's tired, he's old. He's 130, we just read that. Joseph left when he was 17 years old. He was gone 22 years. And we know later Jacob will die at 147 years. He's going to have Joseph 17 years after he comes back to Joseph, and he had Joseph 17 years before Joseph was there. So a total of 34 years he'll have Joseph in his life. And I thought that's kind of interesting. 17, and he'll live another 17 years. And so Jacob blessed Pharaoh and went out from before Pharaoh. God had often uses unbelievers to care for his people. Pharaoh here was going to care for Jacob and all his family, a total of 70, because we just read that, the 66 that come, plus Joseph, his wife, and his 2 grandkids. We saw that with Cyrus in Ezra 1. We saw Nebuchadnezzar be used by God in Jeremiah. God will often use non-believers to carry out his will when it needs to be done. Can't always go by just because they're believers that God's going to use them. the Bible has instances where God uses non-believers to accomplish his will as well. And we've seen that. And so he blesses Pharaoh. And I believe because he knew God was using him. And Joseph, what's that word? Situated his father and his brothers and gave them a possession in the land of Egypt, in the best of the land, in the lands of Ramses, as Pharaoh had commanded. So that picture we had of Egypt, that area is called Ramsey. Now some say Ramsey was a city. Others say Ramses was the area. It'd be like Multnomah County. And Goshen's in Multnomah County. Well, Goshen is supposedly in the land of Ramses. And so, which is interesting because if you ever watch the Ten Commandments, when they go and they're building the thing, Moses, and the guy comes in, the younger Pharaoh, his name's Ramses. And so they don't know if that's what these people were named or if it's just here. I think it's just the area. I think Hollywood just adds stuff to make things look better. But he's in the land of Ramses as Pharaoh had commanded. So Pharaoh gives Joseph's family the best of the land because God had blessed Joseph, because Joseph had blessed Pharaoh. And Pharaoh knew he was blessed by Joseph. He knew, and so he in turn will bless Joseph, but really blessings come from God. It's not because we do anything. I was talking to our friend and they were saying that Joseph interpreted dream. I go, no, actually Joseph did not interpret dream. Joseph himself said, I don't interpret dream. God interprets dream. God used Joseph to communicate to Pharaoh what God was going to do. And we were talking and I was sharing how this is why you should never take credit for the things of God. It's God working through people. Like I shared last week, we are wrenches in the hands of God. Or the Bible says we're clay, he's the potter. He forms us, he uses us for all his purposes. And we have to remember that and never take credit for the things that are going on. We can't take credit for anything that God gives us because he works through us. And so it's important for us to remember that. And Joseph was blessed by Pharaoh because God used Joseph to bless Pharaoh. And he'll always bless his people. Then Joseph provided his father, his brothers, and all his father's household with bread. That's food. According to the number in their family, so the rations are still being passed out. Now, it's probably somewhere around 2, maybe the third year. Because remember, his brothers, the famine started, and then the food ran out, and the brothers went to Egypt, stood there a while, then they went back, ate the food till it ran out. We don't know how long it lasted, 6 months, 1 year. Came back again the second time, but this time with Benjamin, and then they went back to get the father. So 1 or 2 years has already passed during this famine part of the prophecy and what was going to happen in Egypt and the surrounding area. And so this is what we're told here. Now there was no bread in the land, for the famine was very severe. That could mean they were in the middle of it. It was getting bad. So that the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan languished because of the famine. And Joseph gathered all the money that was found in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan for the grain which they bought. And Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house. So Joseph, in charge of the grain and everything, what he does is he's selling the grain to people because he's a wise person that God had given him the intelligence to do this. Remember, he interprets the dream. Pharaoh likes it and says, well, who's better to take care of this than you, since you know what this is all about? And so Joseph works for Pharaoh, and he sold the grain until there was no more money in the land. In other words, he had collected all the wealth in the substance of money from all of Egypt. Everybody's coming to him because they want to eat. He has the monopoly on grain. He's the one that stored it up. He's the one that had it all harvested. And so everybody's coming. So much so that there was no more money. So when the money failed in the land, in other words, it was all gone of Egypt, and in the land of Canaan, all the Egyptians came to Joseph and said, "Give us bread, for why should we die in your presence? We're hungry. We're starving. We can't buy nothing no more. We're out of money, but we need grain. We need to be able to eat." He says, "For the money has failed. It's all gone." Just like we just read. Then Joseph said, "Give your livestock, and I will give you bread for your livestock if the money is all gone." So they brought their livestock to Joseph, and Joseph gave them bread in exchange for their horses, their flocks, their cattle of the herds, for their donkeys. Thus he fed them with bread in exchange for all their livestock that year. We don't know what year. Maybe it's the third year. It could be the fourth year. What we do know is money's gone, and now he's got all the animal, all the livestock of Egypt, and Canaan, whoever else was bringing that were starving. He ends up with all the livestock. And when that year had ended, they came to the next year and said to him, "We will not hide from my Lord that our money is gone. My Lord also has our herds of livestock. There is nothing left in the sight of my Lord but our bodies and our lands. And why should we die because your eyes, both we and our land, buy us and our land for bread? And we and our land will be servants of Pharaoh. Give us seed that we may live and not die, and that the land may not be desolate." So now they're selling themselves. They're selling themselves in order to live. And they're selling their land. So Pharaoh is Pharaoh of all of Egypt. But now even in Canaan and other lands, people are selling themselves. They're getting rid of everything. Pharaoh is going to own everything. And they know it. And they ask for seed. If they're asking for seed, it could be it's either the 6th year. I think it's possibly the 7th year. We're at the very extreme. And you could plant in that 7th year to bring your harvest the following year. That's what I personally believe. Some think it's the 6th year and they're going to harvest the 7th. Doesn't match up to me. It's 7 years of famine. So I'm thinking it's the last year. Things are super hard. Everything's been sold. Everything's been given away to Pharaoh through Joseph just so they can live, including themselves. And they said, "Buy us and our land for bread, and we and our land will be servants of Pharaoh." We will serve Pharaoh in order to live. And then they say, "Give us seed that we may live and not die." Give us seed so we can have bread, so we can make food for ourselves, and that the land may not be desolate. I think the coming year was going to be that. And then Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh. For every man of the Egyptians sold his field because the famine was severe upon them. So the land became Pharaoh. All the land of Egypt became Pharaoh. He owned all of it. All the people became Pharaoh's servants because of this famine. And because God was blessing Pharaoh. But Joseph also helped keep people alive. He not only made Pharaoh wealthy, the most richest man on earth, but he also kept the people alive because God interpreted the dream for him of what was coming and what was going to happen. And so Pharaoh owned everything except, and we'll read that in a minute, And as for the people, he moved them into the city. So he brought them in from the further parts, from one end of the border of Egypt to the other end. And only the land of the priests he did not buy. So the land of the priests was the only land that he did not purchase. For the priests had rations allotted to them by Pharaoh, and they ate their rations which Pharaoh gave them. Therefore they did not sell their lands. Then Joseph said to the people, indeed I have bought you and your land this day for Pharaoh. And then he says, look, here is seed for you, and you shall sow the land, and it shall come to pass in the harvest that you shall give 1/5, that's 20%, to Pharaoh. 4/5 shall be your own, as seed for the field and for your food, for those of your household, and as food for your little ones. So Joseph was fair and honest. And though everything belonged to Pharaoh, his deal is, look, I'll give you seed so you can grow more. You can keep 80% of what you grow, but now there's going to be a tax of 20% that you're going to give to Pharaoh. 20% is a lot, if you think about it. 20% of all they grow will go to Pharaoh, and they'll keep the 80%. But they'll live, and they'll have food for their family, and they'll have maybe a little extra to benefit by. So they said, you have saved our lives. They knew it. They knew Joseph, by his decisions, had saved their lives. Let us find favor in the sight of my Lord, and we will be Pharaoh's servants. And Joseph made it a law over the land of Egypt to this day that Pharaoh should have 1/5, except for the land of the priests only, which did not become Pharaoh's. And so they surrendered to it. They made the deal. They agreed to it. And to me personally, I think they were happy to live, and they were happy to serve Pharaoh, because they would have died had not Joseph been in the middle there to work everything out. And he was fair with them. He didn't cheat them. He didn't take advantage of them. He did what was best for both Pharaoh and the people. Now that's a good politician who can take care of both and make everybody happy. And can you imagine making people happy to be slaves? Who does that? Yeah, this guy does. And so Israel dwelt in the land of Egypt. Now, Israel here is not talking about Jacob. This is the first time we read Israel as a nation. So Israel dwelt in the land of Egypt, meaning the Jewish people dwelt in the land, lived in the land of Egypt, in the country of Goshen, and they had possessions there and grew and multiplied exceedingly. Interesting. All of Israel is losing everything, selling everything, and this verse tells us the land of Goshen was prosperous. The people were multiplying, the cattle were doing good, the sheep were doing good. Everyone was prospering in Goshen. And Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years. So the length of Jacob's life was 147 years. There you have it, 17, a total of 147 years. And when the time drew near that Israel must die, he called his son Joseph and said to him, now I have found favor in your sight. Now if I have found favor in your sight, please put your hand under my thigh and deal kindly and truly with me. Please do not bury me in Egypt. It's interesting. Benjamin's firstborn, he's the one that should be doing this stuff. And Israel, Jacob here, changes it and puts Joseph in charge of this. And he tells him to make a covenant promise. The covenant promise was placing your hand under the thigh. And you guys got to think about this. This is touching your father close to his groins. And this is the custom. You put your hand there, you are making a vow, a promise, a covenant to do what is asked. And so we read this, and Jacob doesn't want to stay in Egypt. He said, "But let me lie with my fathers, and you shall carry me out of Egypt and bury me in their burial place." So you need to take me out of Egypt into Meshpeli. Remember Genesis 47 here. We're told this right here, to the place where Abraham bought the land, and to bury him there. And he said, "I will do as you have said." I make the vow. So he grabs him by the thigh, and he promises that when they leave Egypt, that he'll take him out of Egypt and bury him in Canaan, which will become Israel. And then he said, "Swear to me," and he swore to him. So Israel bowed himself on his head of his bed, meaning he passed away and he died after all this. And Joseph, when I read this story and I think of all that Joseph went through, when I think of being sold, when I think of taken to Potiphar's house, and then the wife lies about him, then he's put in prison, and then in prison he interprets the two dreams of the butcher and baker, whoever they were, the wine and butcher, or baker and wine. And then he's taken out and comes to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh sees what he can do, and Pharaoh blesses him and makes him second in command. And you think of all this time in prison, being taken to Egypt, and all that he went through, and the accusations and stuff. He was honest. He never lost his integrity. He stood honest. He stood hardworking, and he stood committed to God, who he was raised to know God by his father. And he was committed to that. And through all that, through all the hardship he went through, God was always with them. And God had blessed them. Even in prison, God had blessed them. God promoted him each time that it was available, even though I believe the enemy's attacking. Potiphar's wife's lying. The butchers forgot about him. And yet God kept prospering Joseph until the right time. And the time was when he became ruler, because God knew the whole family was going to come to Egypt. And he was going to bless them, and they were going to multiply. We'll read later. They're going to multiply at least by 2 million people before they come out, as we get into the Exodus and read about their travels out of Egypt. So, Father, we thank you that your blessings follow your people. And we can learn from Joseph, Lord, what it is to be a person of integrity. We can see how you blessed his father and gave him another opportunity to see him before he died. And I think, Lord, the 17 years that Jacob was in Egypt, there were years of peace and fruitfulness. He said earlier that he was a lot of evil, a lot of depression, a lot of sadness. But these last 17 years, Lord, he enjoyed his family. He enjoyed Joseph. He enjoyed Joseph's 2 sons, his grandsons. And he lived the rest of his days in peace and was able to watch his family and watch them grow. We don't know how many people grew by the time he passed away 17 years later, but it definitely reached past probably at least 100, maybe 2. So thank you for your faithfulness to your people, Lord. And it reminds us that we just need to stay faithful, and you will bless us. We keep our eyes on you. It doesn't mean we won't go through hardships, but even in the hardships,